when I came here. I'm like,
American Cancer Society, $5.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, starting a little late due to the workshop that we just finished. So with that, I'm going to ask everybody to please turn off your cell phones or any electronic devices that you may have that can make noise. And then I'll ask you, first we're going to call the roll, Val.
Commissioner Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Curry?
here.
Commissioner Danio?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Villa?
Here. And with that, I'll ask you all to stand for our invocation and continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today in thanks. Dear God, we thank you for the positions that all of us hold up here. We ask you to guide our thoughts and our decisions, to always keep Holly Hill's best interest in mind. Dear God, make us not afraid to disagree and bring up new ideas, dear God, and make us come together and your will be done. Dear Lord, we ask you to bless our troops serving to protect our wonderful nation. Dear God, we ask you to bless our president. Dear God, we ask you to bless all of our first responders, our police, and our fire. Dear Lord, we thank you for this. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And now with that, we will move down to public comments. This is the opportunity for our citizens to address the City Commission on items that are not on the regular agenda tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the Commission? Yes, sir. And please state your name and your address for the record, and then you can start.
My name is Samuel Ortiz. I live at 700 Marling Drive, Holly Hill, Florida. I'd like to say good evening to the mayor, vice mayor, and commissioners. Let's see here. I'll try to make this as briefly as I can.
You'll have 5 minutes, and then we'll let you know when that expires.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. I have an issue and require clarification of a code ordinance law. A short time ago, code enforcement informed me that my pickup truck was in violation of a city ordinance code. I was required to remove it or face fines in court. Afterwards, after reviewing the city codes, I discovered that I had the right to keep one project vehicle onto my property, so long as I covered it up, which I did. Code enforcement again informed me I was still in violation of a code violation, and a court date was set. I've since had the vehicle towed away from my property and went to the court date. I lost a day's work in the process. I noticed that the people who reported me were also in violation with an RVE 33 feet long and an industrial-sized commercial truck parked at their residence daily. I reported it to code enforcement case number 19-1837, and they said the residence was in compliance. The city manager concurred about the RV, but not the commercial truck. To this day, both vehicles remain on said property. I disagreed with their comprehension on the ordinance law. Perhaps you all can shed light on this matter. And Officer, you want to hand this code ordinances to the commissioners?
If you do, it becomes public record and you can't get it back.
That's fine.
Okay. You can hand it to our clerk.
Oh. Basically, and I do have actually copies for you all. For them, there's at least 5 in there.
And what is this for the record that you're handing out?
Sir?
What is this that you're handing out to us?
Those are the code ordinance laws that are applicable to the to my issue and clarification for it. And I guess, again, those are copies of the law, basically. The issue I have is that, basically, in boats and recreational vehicles, we have I've since had the vehicles towed away from my property, went to the date. I lost a day's work. I've explained that already. And I've noticed that my neighbor has an RV over 33 feet long and an industrial-sized, commercial-sized vehicle onto his property. The same individual who called on me, I realize that this individual is also in violation. I've informed code enforcement, and they indicated that he was in code compliance. But according to code ordinance law, he is in violation of it. We noticed that in sentence number 3 of the documents that I just handed out, it says that an RV in excess of 18 feet in length may only be parked in an enclosed building with at least a roof, and 3 enclosed sides, whether attached or unattached to the residence. The rear yard or the side yard behind the line extending from the front face of an existing building. This is not in the specifications of this particular individual's vehicle is not in compliance. And then underneath that, of course, section code 114-791, boats and recreational vehicles and equipment, on B of boats and recreational vehicles and equipment, we're showing any RV in excess of 18 feet in length may be parked in the front yard of a residential property a period not to exceed 3 consecutive days in any 7-day period for the purpose of maintenance, loading, and unloading.
Mr.
Now,
Ortiz, your time has run out, but there was about a minute that you took before we started, so without objection, can we let him continue for one more minute?
That's fine.
Seeing no objection, you can continue for one more minute.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. My indication of that, or my comprehension of that, is that the particular individual has equipment and RVs and commercial-sized equipment that is in violation of code, and these are the pictures that I will also add into. I've spoken with the code enforcement and city manager, and they indicated that he was in compliance, and the yellow outline shows where they thought that he was compliant with by email sent by, code enforcement officer Randy, and he basically took half a sentence and adjudicated that to the indication that the vehicle was out of, that was in compliance, which is false, to take a half a sentence out and then assume that a law applies to something.
All right. And you have just a couple more seconds to close and ask us what you need.
Well, basically, if these vehicles are allowed to remain on the said property, if we allow one person, if the law is allowed to be broken by one, it would be broken by many. And what do you plan to do about this? This is, other people in the neighborhood are incompliant. They have already put their roofs, the sides of the building, so on and so forth. This is naked, out in the open. He has commercial vehicles. He has RVs out in the open. It's not compliant. Other people had to pay for garages made for their RVs. This person did not and has not. And to this day, these vehicles remain on this property, which he works out of, with construction materials, which he loads onto his vehicle. And I have to hear that night and day.
All right. Well, thank you for giving us your testimony. We may respond to this after public comments is done, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Jim.
Jim Schultz, 117 Harvard. Corona flu, that's big in the news. Actually, I'm concerned because China sort of has over 1 billion people. How do you keep something from leaving China? It's already in over a dozen countries. It could be a real issue. Where are we going to get our information on this as far as actually preventive information? That's hard to say. Robert Kennedy Jr. Recently, children'shealthdefense.com reported that he was speaking with a CEO of one of the newscast companies, and Kennedy asked, would you allow your hosts on any of your shows to speak adversely about pharmaceuticals? And he said 70% of our income comes from that. We couldn't allow them to do that. In other words, like Cheryl Atkinson found, you are gone if you speak about something in that direction. Just as a little informational thing, the flu mist a few years ago was used for 3 years in the school system as a government program as the most efficient, efficacious, beneficial thing for kids. It was given through outside contractors in the school. I read the data. It showed it didn't work. Well, guess what? After 3 years, the data got so conclusive, they actually pulled it because they finally admitted it was only 4% efficacious. 96% of failure, 4% success. I wouldn't do a Yahoo about that. Anyways, the 2009 flu pandemic, all your government agencies, Britain is even more so than the U.S., bought Tamiflu. Right now, there's a big lawsuit against Tamiflu because it was about as close to useless as you could get. It didn't decrease hospitalizations or deaths, but it did decrease by a few hours, possibly your flu. Again, not exactly. And actually, the way the UK is set up, it wasn't actually prescribed by doctors quite often. It was a call-in thing, and some high school kid or anybody that they hired would just prescribe you this based upon their knowledge of it, which I guess was based upon Roche's theory that it was great. In '76, there was the swine flu. That's the one that they gave out 45, 46 million shots, and it was a massive failure because it eventually came out that they had never tested the vaccine they put out. They damaged, well, over 100 people died from it. Thousands actually got Guillain-Barré, and many were personally disabled, some for life. A gal over in Lakeland actually was the poster girl for this on Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes. And they ended up paying out over $3 billion in settlements, which is darn close to the amount that the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has paid out in close to 40 years to everybody. And now mostly the people they're paying out to aren't injured kids from vaccines, they're adults who thought their flu vaccine injured them. Okay, quadvalent for seniors. In the 80s, 15-20% of the seniors got the flu shot. They claimed that it would drastically decrease pneumonia. We're up to about 80%, and somehow their data now shows there's more pneumonia in seniors than there used to be. Again, another one for the team. Well, the people are taking it for the team because right now, instead of for seniors, the normal flu shot, they give them a quadvalent, 4 times more viral agent in it, which is also proved, according to the Cochrane collaboration, to be equally ineffective. You know, you start to have to wonder where you get your data. Don't go to the internet either, because now they are getting into pharmaceuticals and that, and Adam Schiff has asked him to only speak government policy, and that will make them more money. So you can darn well bet they'll hide searches for actual data. Good luck, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Is there anyone else in the audience? Yes, Mr. Legary.
Commissioners. Jim Legary, 342 Burley. It's been a while since I've said something that y'all laughed at, so I want to ask you a question. How much would it cost to convert the north side of LPGA to some kind of destination that would be worth going to? I think if we, it's the only place I can think of in town that is reasonably controlled where you could slow people down so that there was something there. Because it's going to cost a fortune, I believe, to cover the canal. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Thank you. Gary. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission tonight on anything not on our regular agenda?
I'd like to submit these other 3 documents.
You can give them to our clerk, and they'll go into public record.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. And Mr. Forte, before we move on, I would like you to just address some of Mr. Ortiz's comments. I understand that you've met with him at least once, maybe twice, and if you could explain more what he's asking from this commission, and maybe we could get him an answer.
If I'll have Val pull up 114-791 on the overhead, if you can just enlarge that. What he's referencing is in Section A where it says recreational vehicles and equipment up to and including 18 feet in length may be parked in the front, side, or rear yard of any zoning district. RVEs in excess of 18 feet in length may be parked in the front, side, or rear yards of any industrially approved automotive or recreational vehicle sales lot. In residential zoning districts, RVEs in excess of 18 feet in length may only be parked in an enclosed building with at least a roof and 3 enclosed sides, whether attached or unattached to the residence, the rear yard or side yard behind the line extending across the front face of the existing building. My interpretation of that is if the vehicle is in excess of 18 feet and it's parked in the front yard, it has to be in an enclosed building. If it is not in an enclosed building, then it can be parked in the side or rear yard as long as it's below the front face line of the house.
Excuse me, sir. Just sit down. Thank you.
That's where we disagree. I interpret the code. That's how I interpret it. That's how we've always interpreted it. With regard to the neighbor's been, as long as that RV is parked behind the front line face of the house on the side or rear, it's in compliance. They're allowed to put it in the front yard for up to 3 days for the purpose of loading and unloading the vehicle if they're going to go or come back from a trip. The other commercial vehicle that they have, they've been given a notice of violation from the code officer, and they've responded back that they will have that vehicle gone within 30 days of receipt of the letter, which is the time that they were given.
All right, thank you. So as I understand it, because I too have been talked to by the manager of what the situation is, I've reviewed the code, and unless it's the will of this commission that reads it differently, I read it too as a comma, as a side yard. Many people do have RVs in their side yard, and it's understood that that is the code, that is the law that is out there. Unless it was the will of this commission to interpret it differently and to change that from a comma to whatever it may have to be for Mr. Simpson.
It would just say in an enclosed building, and it wouldn't reference front,
It wouldn't
side,
reference side
The
yard.
reason it doesn't reference front yard is because an enclosed building will either be part of the primary structure or it will be an accessory structure, both of which are regulated. If it's the primary structure, it creates the front yard. If it's an accessory structure, we have separate regulations. To interpret it to require an enclosed building in the side or rear nullifies those language. We wouldn't even have to have reference side or rear. You just say it has to be in an enclosed structure, regardless of where you put it on the property. By reference saying side or rear, that's in addition to an enclosed structure. So it's an enclosed structure or not in an enclosed structure in the side or rear. Otherwise, it nullifies, it makes meaningless the reference to side or rear.
So that's your professional opinion? Yes, thank you. Sir, you did have your chance to speak, and so we're going to respond to what you said.
I didn't say what you said.
All right, well,
I never stated that the vehicle could be parked in the front.
Point of order, Mr.
okay, yeah, excuse me. We're going to go ahead and continue this business meeting. We're going to get you your answer. So, Commissioner, Vice Mayor?
I'll defer to Commissioner Curry. She actually had her hand up first.
I'll go ahead.
In a community as old as ours that evolved with little or no planning, if we were to amend this, we have many people in this city that have recreational vehicles that park them on the side of their houses. We have narrow lots. In a lot of places, that's the only place you could put it. The city wasn't planned like Palm Coast where everything is exactly the same. So to interpret this any other way would do much more harm than good, in my opinion, citywide. And that's what we have to look at as citywide, not one individual, but we have to look at it as a citywide situation. So,
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner?
And along those same lines, I have dealt with it on a few occasions with the city manager and various citizens as far as this very ordinance. And it was interpreted then, and I don't see how you can interpret it any other way. It specifically says the rear yard or the side yard behind the line extending across the front face of an existing building. We can't interpret it any other way. That's plain. So there is no violation, as they're indicating. That's the ordinance. There is no misinterpretation of it. It's there in black and white. I don't think there needs to be a change. And like I said, I've dealt with this on a few occasions with Mr. Forte, with various citizens, and it's the same thing that we came up with at that time.
Based on the fact that I believe both of you, we kind of have three in agreement, unless you would like to add anything.
Well, I would just, I think we strictly have to go along with how the city attorney interprets this. It would be a legal issue.
Well, technically,
He gave a good answer for
yeah,
it.
technically, an interpretation is really not for y'all to do anyway. I didn't know it was coming here. That he could make that argument if he was cited to the special master, that, you know, or if someone could challenge an interpretation to the Board of Adjustments. That's why we have a Board of Adjustments. Your jurisdiction would be to change the law to make it a certain way. The interpretation is made by Joe, staff, and there is a process for appealing it. That process doesn't include coming to you.
Right.
Because there's another board that actually hears the appeal. You would change the code if you wanted to say, well, yes, it always has to be an enclosed structure.
And that would need to go to the Board of Planning Appeals first, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like?
All I was going to say is, Mr. Ortiz, I'm sure that, you know, you get frustrated, but it would be a great hardship on the city to go through the process of changing everything because of a dissatisfaction.
Well, excuse me, sir, you had your time.
It
I'd
sounds,
ask you
to me like they're taking care of the,
Excuse me. Order.
There's no roof over it.
Excuse me.
It's out of
We're in
line.
we're in a business meeting here, and due to Robert's Rules of Order, this is the way we'll communicate. Excuse me, sir. You will have your chance to speak to each of us. All of us have our cell phone numbers, and you can speak to us individually. With this being said, we're going to move on to our next item, and you can contact Mr. Forte, our city manager, or you can contact us individually after this meeting. So with that, we're going to move on to the approval of minutes. Can I have approval of the minutes?
Motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak about the minutes? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Any discussion needed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now moving to the consent agenda. The action proposed is stated for each item on the consent agenda. Unless a city commissioner removes an item from the consent agenda, no discussion on individual items will occur, and a single motion will approve all items. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any item on the consent agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation and entertain a motion for approval.
Motion for approval.
second.
And may I just say real quick, I'm glad to see this. We've needed this for a long time.
Yeah. And with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving to our regular agenda now. Number 1, Resolution 2020-R-7. Scott?
Resolution number 2020-R-7 by title only for first and only reading, a resolution of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, expressing support for the ECHO grant application for PICTONA at Hollyland Park, located at 1066 Ridgewood Avenue, Florida 32117, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Forte.
Yeah, you've approved this resolution before, but there's a change to it in its current format. And what the difference is that in the ECHO grant application documents, it allowed for the land to be valued at 50% of the value of the grant, which is $400,000. So another area of the document said it can only be used at 25%. So it's a difference between 200,000 or 100,000. So it's being rewritten as being 100,000 as 25% of the match of the grant, and that the other 100,000 will be made up. That other 100,000 will be made up with other contributions to the project. I'm just looking for. Okay. So the value of the land of Hollyland Park that's going to be used for the ECHO match will be set at $100,000, which is cast over the entire property of Hollyland Park. That'll
So
be
we
used.
believe the value of the Hollyland Park is only $200,000 for the land?
No, that's 25%.
It's 25%. It's not the value of the property, it's what we're using. We're allocating $100,000 of the value of the land toward the grant. Does that make better sense? It's not that the land's worth $100,000. We can only use $100,000 of its value toward the grant.
All right, okay,
Better?
better.
Okay.
Thanks for that question, because I was
Sorry.
a little
The land is
confused by
worth
that as well.
substantially more than
That was my
$100,000.
point. Yeah, I'll buy it, yeah.
No, if I get there first.
Is there any questions for staff?
How'd your
Nope.
meeting go over there today?
I was going to report at the end of the thing, but good news and bad news. It went well. Our project, the PICTONA project, did qualify to be ranked, but so did all of the other projects. So that means we still have to compete for a good ranking amongst the ECHO board next month, so that there's far more projects than there are monies available. So we have to hope now that we qualify to be ranked, that we'll be ranked high enough to be funded.
Great. Any other questions for staff?
Well, and it helps that we had everything where some agencies didn't.
Yeah, they have some more things to, well, we have to have this. This is
Well,
our outstanding
but-
item. Yeah.
So I think we might be in better shape, hopefully.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll open this up to public participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll close public participation, and I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion needed? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to number 2, ordinance 2020-0-3024.
Ordinance number 2020-0-3024 by title only for first reading. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, regulating mobile food vehicles, amending section 114-904 of the City Code to add definitions, update permitting requirements, restrictions, operating requirements, and establish enforcement procedures, providing for codification, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Mr. Walker, would you like to take it away?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, City Commission. As you all know, over the past several years, the mobile food vending business has been growing in popularity. And in response to that growth, the city, on October 25th, 2016, adopted Ordinance 2981, and this was done to establish permitting and operational procedures for mobile food vending within the city of Holly Hill. Over the past 2 years, there have been approximately 9 vehicles that have qualified and signed up to be mobile food vendors within the city. It was 8 when I gave the presentation to the planning and to the Board of Planning and Appeals, and we've had one additional one since then. And since the mobile food vending has been operating in the city for approximately 2 years, we've had the opportunity now to look back and see what effect it's had on the city. and whether or not any updates need to be done to the current regulations. Thus far, staff is not aware of any negative impact that the mobile food business has had on the city, but neither has it had the economic effect that we thought it may have, and it hasn't generated the amount of activity in terms of folks coming and foot traffic and using the mobile food trucks in the way that we anticipated. So we've listened to comments from the mobile food vendors as well as property owners that host the activity, and thought that maybe there'd be a benefit to refining the current regulations, and that's the purpose of this ordinance. Much of what you see in the ordinance tonight that is proposed to be changed or adopted, it has much of the same information as the one that we currently have. There are a few large differences, and I'll go over those. The largest change perhaps has to do with the number of days that a site can host a mobile food vendor. Currently, our regulations state that no site may host food trucks for more than 1 day a week. But in response to comments from the mobile food vendors themselves, as well as hosting site owners, this ordinance proposes to extend the time permitted for a site to host a mobile food vendor from 1 day a week to a maximum of 4 days per week in any calendar week, and for a maximum of 16 days within any calendar month. So that is perhaps the largest change that you will see. This ordinance also defines what is meant by commissary, mobile food vehicle, mobile food rally, mobile food vendor, what a hosting site is. These are all definitions that are not in our current regulations. Also, while the current regulations don't specifically address the issue of enforcement, this proposed ordinance does. It more clearly establishes procedures and ways of handling violations for those that host the mobile food vehicles, and as well as those who own the mobile food vehicles. The Board of Planning and Appeals recommended at its meeting of January 6, 2020, that the Commission unanimously adopt this proposed ordinance. Staff recommends that the City Commission adopt an ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, regulating mobile food vehicles, amending Section 114-904 of the City Code to add definitions, update permitting requirements, restrictions, operating requirements, and establish enforcement procedures, providing for codifications, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Great, thank you. I'm sure many of us have some questions to this. Thank you for the time you've spent on this. It's I like the way that we put something out there and then get feedback and figure out how it's working, and then come back and address it more intently as you've done. So appreciate your work to all the staff on this. A few questions that I had. Before, did the hosting site property owner have to come for the permit, or did the food truck?
The way that it is now is that the food trucks pay an annual registration fee. It's $125, and that covers the review of the application. The fire marshal also reviews to make sure that the connections on the vehicles meet code, and so that's a fee that the mobile food vendor, the truck operator, pays. The site, the hosting site, the person having the actual truck there, pays $5 per day. And that hasn't changed in this new ordinance. It's still proposing that the property owner pay $5 per day.
Okay.
And there's an
So the
annual
property
registration.
owner came in for that permit and applied for it themselves. The food truck didn't apply for it for them on their
Food truck
behalf?
has to register annually.
Right, correct.
And the property owner registers on the daily basis.
Right.
Great. And that didn't change?
No.
Okay. Another one is, and this is just a slight thing, a single permit may include multiple dates was in the original wording. That was taken out in 2D, but there was, let's see, I have in here number 1, D1. So will that suffice now by saying if you include all of your dates? Meaning
Yes.
you can apply in one time for multiple dates?
That's my understanding, correct?
Okay, great.
Yes, we don't have anything in here that prohibits that.
I just don't
so-
want them to have to come in every single day.
No,
for-
I don't
Okay.
do that.
No.
When we're looking at 3H, my question was, let me see here. Can you read 3H to me?
No mobile food vehicle may be located on a vacant lot, provided, however, this restriction shall not apply to an approved mobile food vehicle rally, also known as food truck courts or truck rallies, approved as a special permit.
So my question is should we add in there any other special event approved by the city? For instance, if we had like any type of event, a car show or anything on a vacant lot, would we be able to somehow allow a food truck to be there?
Any mobile food vehicle can locate on a vacant lot with a special event permit.
Okay, great.
This is just food trucks only.
Only, okay. Wanted to make that clear. Let's see, 3I, would you please read that aloud?
Mobile food vehicles are not allowed in residential areas or the residential portion of a mixed-use PUD and may not locate any closer than 100 feet from a residentially zoned area.
So was there any problem before that we know of with any residential area being affected by this? Is that why this was added?
No, we haven't had any issues that I'm aware of, but what it does is it keeps mobile food vehicles well within commercial areas and away from homes and areas where we have residentially zoned property. That is a fairly common and consistent regulation throughout the cities that I looked at. I looked specifically at several cities.
So normal
It
practice?
just keeps it well into the commercial area.
And that you know of, there's no current businesses that are using this food truck ordinance that would now be out of compliance?
No.
Okay. And then 3J, could you please read that for the record as well?
Yes. Oops. The mobile food vehicle or its seating areas may not occupy more than 20% of the vehicular use area or disrupt parking area operation. Mobile food vehicles may not be located in landscaped areas or designated public safety lanes.
So, and actually I'm going to come back to that because I have a comment on that for the commission, but so let's stick with questions. Is there any other questions for the commission?
I was just going to ask you, do you want us to bring up all of our concerns or just wait for
Yeah, let's
comments?
just do questions first and then we'll bring up statements and concerns.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
I have one right now.
Commissioner Curry.
The Class 3 ice cream trucks,
Yes.
do they fall under this 3I as well? No, not 3I. Yeah, 3I as well, the 100 feet from a residentially zoned area? I mean, that's kind of their purpose, to go to the
Yeah.
kids.
No, they would not. Ice cream trucks would be allowed on all rights of way.
But where does that say
This is only
that?
class 1 that we're addressing tonight. This is a food truck ordinance,
Okay, but-
not an ice cream truck.
Under the Class 3 in the
But
paragraph,
Class
it says
3
a
is listed.
Mobile food vehicle permit
As a
is not
definition.
required.
Okay,
Only as a definition.
okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So just to, as you go into your question and comment area, we tried this food truck thing a couple of years ago, and now we're revisiting it due to some issues that have come up. And we've looked at some of our surrounding cities, specifically Ormond and Daytona Beach, where their food truck allowable areas are in industrial zones. And they accommodate things like breweries and distilleries where people want something to eat while they're patronizing that particular business. In our case, the location of our breweries and distilleries are in the CC1. And we're doing a zoning change, not a site change. So these rules apply to everything in the CC1. So we can debate some of these things to the ridiculous that odds are will never happen one way or the other. But we want to put the conditions in place because of the possibility that it could happen. And that's why you see some of the restrictions the way they are, because if you left them too loose, someone could take more advantage of that. Will they? Probably not. Could they? Yes. So we're putting the restrictions in to accommodate those few businesses that desire to have a food truck, but hold their restrictions tight enough so that it doesn't become an abused permission.
Thank you. Commissioner
All right,
Daniel?
what was I remember we talked about this one day a week, and the location for brick and mortar distance of existing restaurants. What is it now?
There is no distance or separation requirement from a brick and mortar. It's one thing I looked at very closely, and, Mr. Simpson may be able to address it in more detail, but there have been several cities in the United States that have been sued by folks because they felt that the city was regulating competition. So, and they won some of those suits. What this does is this ordinance sticks primarily to the health and safety issues and doesn't go into the regulating of distance. And there are many, many cities throughout the United States that do not regulate distance between the food truck and brick and mortar.
So one of the concerns we had back when we first talked about this was setting up across from, I don't have a problem because I'm in the business, but I've been there long enough, but there's a couple other places that aren't maybe as established that would certainly not want a food truck across the street 4 days a week.
That's very possible, and, those folks would be encouraged to come and make their voice known to let you know how they feel, but
And that's why these rules are in place, because of, you may have those scenarios.
I don't think we restrict that now. We don't have restrictions on,
Well, we talked about 1 day a week.
No,
but it's 1 day a week, but we
There's
don't
no-
have any distance
there's
restrictions.
no distance restrictions.
Currently.
Yeah, so you are correct. Someone can set up a mobile food truck in the barbershop parking lot 4 days a week. Yes,
That doesn't scare me.
that's possible.
Right.
Is it likely?
Yeah. But could they set up 4 days a week across from some of the newer places?
Could set up anywhere in this district 4 days a week.
I'm not sure if that's advantageous to, we're starting to promote Restaurant Row, and yet we're going to allow 4 days a week. I think we have to have some restrictions on,
That's why we're trying to accommodate where the need is, but because the need is in a zoning district, it applies to the entire zoning district. So if you make it too restrictive, you're restricting where the demand is. If you make it too loose, you're opening it up for everybody. And that's why it's a very delicate balance. And, we can take this ordinance and go to the distillery and the distillery and the brewery and say, and the food trucks and say, how do you like this? And they may say, oh, that's pretty good. But then you go to every other restaurant on US 1 and say, how do you like it? And they may go,
I
not close for
remember
me.
we had
That's the
a
challenge.
lot of opposition in the very beginning when I was sitting on that side, and we found out that the food trucks promote business, and there's nothing wrong with competition, but that's not going to be easy to swallow by brick and mortar restaurants
Who pays tax?
4 days a week.
Well, we can always.
They pay a lot more than $125 a year.
We can always amend it. We adopted something, what I understand, it was too restrictive, wasn't working. We're loosening it up. If it creates a problem, we can tighten it back down. It's a trial and error thing.
Because it's the first reading.
No, I'm just saying, we can put
Do
it
it
in
later.
place, we adopt it.
If over time
Over
you find
time.
it's a problem,
In a year from now, if we say, look, it really is adversely impacting the brick and mortar restaurants, then we can come back and reduce the number of days down. But
It would-
until we-
What happens to the places that don't last a year because we gave 4
Well, we
days
don't
a
have to
week?
wait a year. I'm just saying, if we really, if they come in and say, look, this is really impacting us, you can address that in a month.
Right.
Why would we want to go that route, though?
Well, you don't know. I'm
because
just saying,
it may not happen.
it may not happen.
But if it does happen, you can change the rule.
Because what I've heard so far is, and Brian has talked to them, 1 day a work week does not work. It's hamstringing the ability of us getting food trucks. So that's not working well. We're not going to get the food truck business that some may want with 1 day a week is what I've
Well, if
heard.
we're adopting something new, why can't we restrict the distance to a existing restaurant?
We just explained that you can't restrict it from an existing restaurant because it's been found to, you can't regulate competition. So we weren't allowed to do that. So, if we didn't allow distilleries and breweries in the CC1 and restricted them only to the I zoning, this wouldn't be an issue. But because it's in the CC1, that's what we're trying to address, to allow the food trucks to accommodate that demand. Those types of businesses want to have food trucks at their establishments, but you're opening it up because it's in the entire zoning classification.
It's to apply to the whole zoning class, basically.
This proposes,
Okay, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, this proposes to allow them in any non-residential zoning district. So CC1, I1, I2, B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, but it also restricts them to no more than 4 hours on any site. Now, that can also be easily changed. Some
Increased or
places,
decreased.
right. Some places allow them 2 hours. And, you know, I did a lot of research in this to kind of see really what is going on throughout the country. And the rules are as different as they can be. So really, what this looks at is the experience of this city over the past 2 years. What's been a problem, what hasn't been a problem, and so it's kind of tailor-made to what our needs are. The restriction on time, how many hours you can be at a site, that was not in the original ordinance. The reason why it was added is because we increased the number of days. And so instead of having 4 days where you can have a food truck 10 hours a day or there all day, set up in the morning and then leave at night, essentially becoming like a brick and mortar, we said, no, they can only be there 4 hours. You can make that 2 hours. You can put the hours if you want. You can say they can be there only from noon to 2 to accommodate the lunch crowd, or 11 to 1.
But that doesn't restrict a property owner from having a special event for whatever reason.
That's different.
And inviting food trucks on for a longer period of time. So this is basically this is the day-to-day limitations or approvals.
You still have the floor, Commissioner.
Anything
just
special event is totally.
I just think whatever I say or how I look at it, it's going to come off as being biased, so.
Well, it should.
No, it's
You're a
not biased.
restaurant
It's
Yeah, I know, that's, you know.
I would expect nothing less.
you're up here to have your opinion, so, go full force
I just,
on what you
know,
believe.
I'm trying to think at it both ways, but I can't help but think at it. I've been in the restaurant business 32 years. I've been on a commission for 3. My initial, would be, I don't think I would be in favor of somebody 4 days a week, and I got 32 years under my belt.
Right.
But there's a couple other guys that are trying to, get roots in this city, and I don't think they would want anybody across the street from that for 4 days a week either.
Sure.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
No,
Commissioner?
that's all I have to say.
All right. Commissioner Johnson, do you have any questions for
I
staff?
think you pretty well covered. My main concern was if necessary, you can change it.
Absolutely. And you're right, Commissioner Daniel, you can change between first and second reading. Before we
I got a
come
lot
back
of
for
comments,
second reading, it
questions.
can be further tweaked.
Not questions.
All right. Is that all, Commissioner Johnson? All right. Would you rather make a comment before or after public comment?
After.
Okay. With that, are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open this up to public participation. Mrs. Heller?
Hi there, I'm Heidi Heller of 460 Ridgewood Avenue in the future excellent city of Holly Hill. Just have some clarification.
Why isn't it excellent now? You say that every
Yeah,
time
it's
you come up
present.
here.
What happened to
Well-
present?
It always can get better.
Why don't you say
Everybody
always
can get
improvement?
better.
Why don't you say always improvement?
I like my way. So, just some clarification. Number 3H, no mobile food vehicle may be located on a vacant lot, provided, however, this restriction shall not apply to an approved mobile food vehicle rally also known as food truck courts or truck rallies, approved as a special event. Let's go down to 4F. All mobile food vehicles must park on a hard stabilized surface, such as a paved or asphalt surface. And does that mean that even truck rallies have to
No,
be on?
it's a special event.
It's a special exception allowed on a vacant piece of property.
It's a special event, it's a totally different approval.
Totally removed?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Heller. Yes, in the back. Just ask you to state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Jose Huerta, 644 State Avenue. I own a food truck, and we usually try to stay away from other restaurants and stuff. But my question to that would be also, what happens if another restaurant of brick and mortar gets right next to it or across the street? I mean, wouldn't that be the same thing? I mean, competition's competition, right? I mean, I don't understand what it would be if, whether there's a food truck in next to you or if somebody builds, because I'm seeing a lot of buildings going up. I mean, we're in an industrial city here, and really, I'm from California, from Los Angeles, and there's food trucks on every single corner down there. And seeing a city like this, why I got a food truck was because I saw the potential of actually having a good business here. And as I'm starting to look around and not seeing no other food trucks. So of course I've reached out to some of the food trucks that I know from other cities and asked them, there's like virgin land here, you know, there's no food trucks. And they're like, yeah, stay away from Holly Hill. I'm like, why? Because they're tight on restrictions and rules, and you got one day. I mean, you can't build a business being on one spot one day, because the people usually want you there more than just once. Like, for example, the construction site across the street. I went over there and talked to them, and they were like, well, yeah, you can't just come once a day, though, because the guys are going to rely on you to come and bring them lunch or bring them a snack or something. You know, my answer is we can't, you know, because Holly Hill tells us we can only be there once a day. You know, to me, it's more helping manage businesses a little bit better, because we help the people that only have a half hour of lunch, only have 15-minute breaks, and you go there and you're already there. They don't have to leave. Helps traffic. I mean, helps all kind of stuff. And I mean, I hope that you guys do pass the 4 days, because that way I don't have to travel around everywhere and just stay in one spot for 4 days. You know, and it's like, I understand what you're saying. Believe me, I do. I understand what you're saying. But it's the same thing. I mean, on Walker Street, you got 3 gas stations in one corner. Same thing. I mean, you know, if you've got real food, real good food, you're going to get it. I go to all the restaurants here, and I have a food truck. I'm Mexican. We eat Mexican food. But I go to all the other restaurants because I like food. I mean, I'm not a little guy. I like food. And if you think that your food isn't good enough to compete with somebody else's, you got to step up your game. I mean, that's it. Pretty much. I mean, you know, I don't lowball. I keep my prices matched with everybody else's. So I'm not going in there trying to lowball anybody and, you know, I got a taco for 50 cents, you know, why are you going to buy one for $2? You know, we don't do that. So, you know, hopefully that changes do happen, because they're beneficial to everybody. It helps. I think it helps everybody. You know, I also work at a shop, and they get a 30-minute break. You don't got enough time to go anywhere and come back in 30 minutes. But if there's a food truck there, you go out there and you order your food, and you get it, and you're done. So I just wanted, this is my first time, if you guys haven't noticed. So thank you guys. I hope that everything goes good, passes, and really helped me.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
I just hate to ask, I got a text from my wife. She got sick, so I have to go pick up my daughter somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
So does anybody have a question for me before I leave, or on this issue or any other issue?
We got second reading. We're clearing it.
Well, I
If we mess it up
understand
tonight,
that,
we'll
but-
clean it up second.
Yeah.
Anything? You sure?
No.
Well, you can call me if you got a question. I'll be in the car for a little while. No, you don't make something up. Sorry about that.
Your wife's sick or your daughter's sick?
No, my wife was sick. She was supposed to pick my daughter up at a basketball game, and she just texted me that she's sick, so.
You should get her a car, Scott.
It's one of those flying cars we talked about, right?
Flying cars.
She's like refusing to drive, and she's a horrible driver.
Welcome to fatherhood.
Thank you, Scott. All right, Commissioner.
Name is Gillis Blaze, 710 Magnolia. Ladies and gentlemen, I spend a lot of my times with the veterans organizations, especially the VA clinic. I'm so glad when the vendor shows up, and also other veterans, it is a service to the community. And furthermore, I am for this ordinance because it opens up Hollow Hill for businessmen. The economy is, the city is very important. If you're going to have them, you enforce them. Once upon a time, we go back 30 years ago, we had a warehouse on Commercial Street that had vending vehicles. They'd leave the door open. We, the police department, secure the property, and we see these vending vehicles, roaches around them. So if you're going to have them, you inspect them and you make sure they don't become roach coach. That's all I have to say. I will support this ordinance, and if you have any problems, you bring this issue up and rectify the problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillis. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this item tonight? Seeing none, I will close public participation. And Commissioner Penny?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second on the floor? We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion needed? Yes, sir.
I've got several things I'd like to discuss, so I don't know if you'd like me to go down my list and then we'll discuss them individually?
Yep.
Okay. Because this is going to be, if we approve any of these, of my suggestions, it'll have to be an amendment to the motion.
Okay.
I'm on to number 2, licensing and permitting.
Val, can you pull that up as he goes along?
It's the ordinance itself.
What's the first one?
Section 2, paragraph D. I agree that the food vendor should pull a permit. I don't agree with the host property of pulling a permit in any way. Especially 7 days in advance, pulling a permit. You might want to buy lunch for your employees for an employee appreciation day next Thursday or this Thursday. Maybe it's too spontaneous, but I just think if we're trying to make it easier, that paragraph D is totally cumbersome for the business that is inviting the food vendor to their property.
So your suggestion would be to remove it altogether?
My suggestion would be to strike that entire paragraph.
Would it then, and Mr. Walker, actually, if you would like to come up, actually, let's take it one by one instead of just going down the
Right.
list.
That's
Easier. Yeah.
Right.
So first off, would that be possible, or would we have the food truck have to get a permit? Is there any
My
permit
suggestion
process?
my suggestion is, and it's in here, that annually a food truck vendor must register with the city, receive all this blah, 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 display their placard, blah, 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 be approved by the health department, blah, blah, blah. If they're good enough for the health department, they've passed their inspection, they're good enough for me. That's my position.
Do you understand that?
Yes.
I think, and Commissioner Penny and I debated this a little bit earlier, and the reason that we require them to get a permit is so that we can inform the property owner and the food truck vendor, because it may or may not be the same one, where they're supposed to be positioned, that we have knowledge that they're going to be there, that we can regulate the times. I think a compromise would be if a particular business pulls a permit, that permit's good for the year. Because any food truck that comes on there now, that business can instruct them on where they can park, what they can do, how they can do it. and comply with all of those and verify that the vehicle is licensed and all that. The vehicle's got to be licensed. But we have to at least know what business is doing it. We can't just drive down the street and see a food truck and go, well, they're not in compliance with all these other things, where to park, where not to park.
Why didn't you give me that suggestion last week when we talked about it?
I did. You weren't listening to me.
Can I just have one?
Yes, Mr. Walker.
comment?
Yep.
If we do that for the year, if they pull it for the year, then it would make it, or could make it more difficult to regulate whether or not they're spending more than 4 days a week at that particular site.
I think if we know if and again, I think what we're doing is we're focusing on the two primary business establishments, the brewery and the distillery.
It's really not the distillery, because they can't sell beverages. So it's really the brewery that's the big concern.
So they come in and they say, look, I want a food truck here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's going to be. We go by and we see it's there on Monday.
Right.
We got a problem. But the problem comes in is new businesses that pop up, and all of a sudden, taco truck down at Ace Hardware. All of a sudden, the taco truck shows up, and he's there on a Monday, and we're like, well, was he there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday? So again, we're talking about, as Gillis said, regulating. We have to be able to regulate, and the only way we can regulate is to have knowledge that it's happening.
Well, and, okay to...
Yeah, you have the floor.
I could concede to that, but I would also ask that if a business wants to have a food truck, like Mr. Forte said, they come in for an annual permit. No $5 a day, no this or that. Make the fee whatever it is for the year, and then just do it. Because then you talk about a accounting nightmare. Well, they were here 3 days, February, and then they're here 4 days, this. Make it a $50 a year, $100, whatever the fee is, that could be determined later. But I agree with Mr. Forte that we need to put the property owner on notice as to where the food truck, because there's regulations where they can and can't park. But I just don't think, if I'm the owner of Red Pig, and I can only equate this to the Ormond Brewery, you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings. That's their 4 nights. They kill it up there. I hope Red Pig can kill it down there. But for him to have to come in every week and pull a permit. Now, I know we could pull a permit once a year and put all the dates, but he's not going to know what all the dates are and when special events are. So I'm okay with this if we can amend it to an annual permit or something like that.
What happens if somebody decides that they want to have something and they didn't pay for the whole year, though? They have a special exception or something?
You're going to come in, if I want to, for example, if I want to have food truck at the Allstate shop next Friday, I'm going to come in and pay the $50 or whatever the fee is, and I can have a food truck there 4 days a week for the entire year. No
Well, what if you only want to have it one time?
Then you're going to pay the same fee.
Well, that might discourage you from having an employee appreciation.
So
if
make
you
that
gotta pay
fee
$50.
affordable, make it $25. Make it something affordable.
Well, and if staff is only working on the permit one time,
Right.
then that would cut the
And-
cost
Right.
anyways.
And I think our whole purpose in the permit is just for informational purposes for the business.
It's not to generate money, it's
Yeah.
So
so
I
we
think
know what's going
a
on.
$25 fee would be fine.
Is that correct, Mr. Forte?
Yeah, I mean.
We're not trying to
you
make
can
money.
do all kinds of, you can do a X dollars, 50, 100, whatever the number you want to call it, for a year, or you can do a $5 per occurrence if you decide you want to do it once.
All right, okay. I
You
mean,
can
we
do
can
it.
work the details out of the fee schedule, but I just want you to be able to come in one time and get it for the whole year if you want, or like you said, maybe it's $5 if you only want to do it for Employee Appreciation Day. But if you're going to have it on a regular basis, it's,
Well, that's different if you're gonna have a regular basis, but if you're kind of strangling them, because then you're discouraging somebody to have a spur of the moment.
I agree.
appreciation day
So
for
let's
$50.
make it
It's
next
like
enough.
already gonna treat them for lunch,
we make them get garage sale permits, and we don't
you-
charge for that.
You may be able to have two pricing structures, so you
Right.
do
Well, that's what Joe's saying,
just for a
right?
year-long 50 and then $5
Right.
if you want to have just one and you don't really have.
And I don't know how we're going to amend this motion if there's.
Yeah, this is going to be
these other
tough. You're
things.
probably going to have to withdraw.
If you get into that much detail, we'll probably make the changes and bring it back for a first reading again.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, do you have anything else to comment on
I
that?
think, Mayor,
Do we have any consensus?
as you go through these, I would like you to either agree or disagree so that we don't have to come back
Okay.
each time.
So do you
And
want
in-
us to withdraw our
and in
motion?
fact,
Not yet.
if you're going to make more than 2 or 3 changes, then I would suggest withdrawing the motions, make the changes, and reset this for.
Right,
So now, I mean, we could withdraw the motion
Do you think you're going to have more than one or two changes?
my thought was that this should be a workshop environment, because I
Yeah,
have about
right.
12 changes.
I agree.
I'm
We should
kinda
have.
Then why don't we workshop?
Only because I'm a little uncomfortable being in the position I'm in right now.
So-
I'd like to find out from
The
someone
only
I
thing
follow.
is, John, is I know that, for instance, the brewery is hurting for this.
No, if I withdraw my motion, I want to workshop it right now.
Oh,
Don't-
okay.
You don't want
Then
to workshop, you
let's-
just continue the
Let's
meeting.
We'll just
okay.
talk it right
This
now.
is the
Right,
workshop.
Right, right.
That's what I'm saying, this is the
If you
workshop.
make it a
Right.
workshop,
Right.
you can't vote.
Okay, then
So continue the meeting.
let's
and make a
continue the meeting
decision.
if you guys will give me the leeway to go with my crazy list here.
Yep. Let's do it.
And then you guys all have your crazy list too.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any consensus of the direction of paragraph D? Are we okay with a one-time fee and an annual fee?
I am.
I'm good with that.
Consensus, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So is this going to be a permit that would be pulled for the year? Because if they pull it for a year, then they
Yes.
have the permit, but how are we going to regulate throughout that year whether or not they're actually there 4 days a week, or if they're there 4 hours a day?
That's a whole nother paragraph here. We're gonna change that one too,
All right.
hopefully. Now I'm on to section 3. Paragraph I. Basically says you can't go in a residential area. I have been to at least 2 private parties where food truck vendors were invited to be a catering service for a birthday party.
That's a special event.
In my house, I got to pull a special event permit to have a food truck come to my house and cook food for my friends?
If you're going to have a wedding at your house and bring in a food truck, that's a special event.
But if I go to a surprise 50th birthday party for my friend and his wife brings a food truck to their house and only serves brisket to the 25 people that are there,
Sounds pretty specific.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Why brisket?
Better off getting tacos.
No, but I don't, and I know this is very rare occasion, and I don't think anyone's going to go to the special master for doing this. But it's there, and if we're fixing it, I think the paragraph should read, mobile food trucks are only allowed in residential areas for private catering. That makes sure that it can't go to the end of my street and set up for business, but they're allowed to come and host a private party.
Private catering.
We would have to define what's meant by catering, because people would extend that. The issue has been that when these trucks come into residential areas, you're in a sense bringing a commercial business into a residential area.
But we haven't had one complaint about this in the past 2 years, correct?
No, because they haven't been allowed in residential areas. The ordinance currently in place doesn't allow it, so.
But they're probably not allowed in Port Orange where this party was either, but it happened. I mean, it's a really cool thing. I mean, Gutakis is a foodie, he would agree.
Well, and I think, though, Vice Mayor, that if they just come in for the special event permit, you know, for instance,
But
throwing a big
really,
party.
I mean, if I have a party, if I have a family reunion at my house, I have to get a special event permit to have a
What's the
barbecue in my
difference between that
backyard.
and the other permit? I mean, what's, this is
A
language?
business, if I'm holding my business, I could certainly get a special event permit, but if I'm having a party at my house,
Yeah, if I'm
not
if
gonna
I'm
pull
hosting a food truck for my grandkid's birthday, why do I have to come in and get a
what's the difference
special
if you have a
event?
bounce house in your backyard for a
Well,
private
what's the
party?
difference between a special permit and just a regular permit?
Why would you have to get a permit at all, is what I'm saying.
So you're saying they wouldn't have to get any permit?
Be like ordering, having a caterer.
Yeah, what's the difference if you drop off 20 pizzas at my house, or he brings 20 dozen tacos to my house? It's the same thing.
Well, maybe we should have it so that it's so, well,
Huh?
The one keeps you up all day, the other keeps you
yeah,
up
but
all
one
night.
would be sitting. Yeah, I was gonna say,
right.
one would be a,
The intent of this is you don't want,
I don't want businesses in the neighborhoods, but I don't want
Right.
to preclude,
and under that
Yeah, and that's
circumstance,
a-
maybe if you change it for private catering events, I don't think somebody's going to have a private catering event every Saturday night at their house.
no, it's gonna
No.
be, it's gonna be,
Again,
as
these are such rare occasions that I don't think it should tie you down too much.
no, and I know, but if we're fixing it, let's not just
I
leave
agree.
a problem
So
there.
to allow it for private catering on a private property.
But I don't think they should, like you said, have to get a permit.
No, that's what we're saying. We're saying it's
Right.
allowable on a
Yeah,
single-family
'cause you got,
residence.
Okay.
you got a caterer
So, and
versus a,
I think there's going to be some defining stuff that staff will have to work on, so let's
we'll
let
get it. We'll
staff
just
work
make
on
notes.
that, and
You
then.
could maybe say with no merchandise for sale or something like that, because
Right,
when
right.
they show up, the whole neighborhood's not coming to get tacos. It's
Well, I'm not paying for the whole neighborhood.
you are if it's your birthday party.
I'm a little cheap.
So I would be in consensus of moving that forward for staff to try to define that,
Okay.
work out maybe that, bring it back.
Okay.
Yep.
Paragraph K.
Was that 3K?
Yeah, you guys know I'm a number guy. I'm fine with the intent of this, but I think when you read the second line, vehicle for more than 4 days?
oh, you're talking about a 5-day
Yeah.
week? I mean,
No,
week.
and it says meaning Sunday through Saturday for a maximum of 16 days in any calendar month. Well, I'm a numbers guy, and if you do that, you're missing out. Some weeks have
5 weeks.
Yeah, some months have 5 weeks. So when we look at payroll, some people are getting paid every other week. Well, you get 26 paychecks.
All we
Well,
have
if
to
you
do is
divided
strike
that-
the 16 days and leave it at 4 days a calendar week.
That's what I'm saying. Strike that whole last sentence. Because one way, if you work it the way staff has prepared it, at 16 times 12, it's 190 calendar days per year. But if you really took 52 weeks and multiplied it by 4, it's 208 calendar days
It's
per
4
year.
extra weekends a year.
Exactly. So just strike meaning Sunday through Saturday for a maximum of 16 days within any calendar month.
And I'll also add the word "than" between more
Yeah.
and for.
Yeah, I'm like reading that. Am I reading wrong?
I was just testing everybody, Commissioner.
You want to make sure we were reading it.
That's it.
Any
You guys follow me on
objections?
that?
Yep.
Any objections? All right, that's good.
Okay.
Forward.
I had heartburn with M, but that's okay. The 4 hours, because this is either going to be a lunch crowd or a dinner crowd. I don't think anyone's going to be the bus, so forget that.
So you have no problem?
No
with
problem with the M.
Okay.
I highlighted operating requirements, A, zoning requirements. The property on which the mobile food and vendor proposed must be in a business, commercial, industrial. Does this trump what we just did up in paragraph I? Does this conflict with it? Where you said they can go into,
I'll add to this to add an exception.
okay. You see what I'm saying there?
No.
This says that they can't, the only places they can go is a business, commercial, or industrial zone, where we just set up in paragraph I that they could go into residential area for a private party.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yep. So that's,
That's conflicting.
yep. Any objection? Seeing none.
Okay, now I'm still in paragraph 4, item D. No more than 2 tables, counter stands, and chairs. I mean, some guy might have a 4-top card table, and some guy might have a 12-foot long table. I don't know if we want to micromanage all that stuff.
That was my question as well.
Because we talked about they can't take up more than 20% of the area, and they can't take up some more parking than is necessary. I just think
Strike it all together?
you're micromanaging them
Yeah.
to death there.
So strike it.
And then
Lee, Commissioner?
I'd strike it completely. That's
Any
what I would-
objection?
Grant?
All right.
And then item I, we've already said in a previous paragraph that there can't be 2 on the property unless it's a special event. But item I says that there must be a minimum of 200 feet between a mobile food truck unless specifically permitted by the city. So if Allstate wants to have one, then the Americans for First Amendment Rights can't have one because we're 200 feet together.
Well, they would, in that case, we would look at it, and that's why it says specifically, unless specifically permitted by the city, so.
Right, but they're not going to come in every time we get a permit. We're going to give them an annual permit, and then
We talked about this one.
we did talk about this one. But if we give them the annual permit, I don't know, they don't know when I'm going to host one, and if we schedule it for the same Friday,
Again,
then we're going to butt heads.
again, this is designed for 4 days a week. They're competing 100 feet apart, as opposed to you have an employee appreciation 4 times a year. They have one next door 4 times a year. They happen to overlap. So what?
I know, but that's
Do
what
we
I'm saying,
need
so,
this?
so
But
do
it
we
said
need,
it's specifically permitted by the city.
I don't think we need it.
Wait a minute, wait. Who's competing with the two food trucks?
In John's hypothetical world,
No, I'm saying it's set up so that they,
Where they're eating brisket and bouncing in bounce houses.
usually I
Good
follow-
world.
Usually I follow that with
I
no
want that.
offense, and my wife says, just because you say no offense doesn't mean it's not offensive.
I could take it.
wait, wait,
So are we-
is that what it is?
What?
Back up.
If two businesses next door happen to have food trucks on the same day, and they're within the 200 feet, they would need to get special permission from the city.
But they're not going to. They're just going to do it.
Well, if you're coming in, if you're
don't
only
know
at
why
one time
we
a
need to
year or
have it.
twice a year, or if you're buying it for the entire year,
Right, if I bought it for the entire year and BFFAR bought it for the entire year, when conflicted, one of us would have to
Yeah,
go
it
away.
would conflict.
no.
But,
No,
you're-
we would-
but this
no.
is written to,
But you don't know when I'm going. You don't
That's
know
what
when
I'm
I'm.
saying. So if it happened once, nobody's going to violate the
I
vendor.
know, but it says right here.
Yeah,
Right.
I think this is for
we
the,
need-
this is for the Thursday, Friday, Saturday guy every week. It's not for the occasional.
so we're gonna
And-
pick and choose what laws we
Hold on,
want.
let's have some order here.
Why?
Let's have some order here. Commissioner Daniels still has
is
the
this to
floor.
protect the food truck from the other food truck?
I don't know.
That's what I think it's written for.
I think the intent is so that you don't have a food truck row and it's not a special event. I
Right.
think that's the intent.
Correct.
Is that you don't have 12 businesses on US 1 line up food trucks, because that could cause traffic problems and bathroom problems and all that
That
kind of
means
stuff.
we have lots of people coming in.
So, Commissioner, Vice Mayor Penny, you have the floor.
No, that, I,
would like to
I don't know,
strike that.
I don't know, I would like to strike it myself personally, Mr. Forte is gonna be mad at me, but I don't know what the,
have a problem.
I don't know what the consensus of the commission is.
I do not
No?
have a problem.
Seems like consensus to move this forward, and if you disagree with it later, when it comes back to us, we can
And-
talk
You know,
about taking.
If you want to play the devil's advocate on this, and I'll go kind of along the lines what the gentleman in the audience said, is he doesn't go around lowballing people, but if he's trying to establish his business and he's selling his tacos at a fair price, and somebody wants to be a pain and decides, well, I'm going to set up right next door and I'm going to sell my tacos for $1 and I'm going to run you out of town because I don't like it.
But here's the caveat. Mr. Inferior Taco Stand can't come and set up next to Ace Hardware unless that business owner invites him.
That's right.
So the only reason business owners are inviting these trucks to their businesses is to improve sales in their primary business. That they are here 365 days out of the
Right.
year, and they pay a lot of property taxes. And anything we can do to help the businesses here, I'm fully in favor of.
And just to add on top of that, competition is good. If they move across the street and charge half, then that guy's got to charge half, or else he's not going to get the business.
And you got two empty businesses, and we're just trying to fill up the businesses. What do we accomplish if we're gonna have
You'll
empty
be back
buildings
here-
again? That's
you'll
what
be
I'm trying to
back here
figure out
tomorrow.
here.
So, all right, let's have some order
I won't
here.
die on that one, but
Let's have some order here. You have consensus to move it forward at least.
Okay.
For it to come back to strike.
And
four
one
out.
last thing, I want to be clear that, just lost my mind for a second. That we were talking about parks. These food trucks can't just show up in our city parks.
No.
They can only go, because they can't go to vacant property, but they can't go to our parks and set up without the city inviting them. to
That's
link-
right. We're the owner of that property.
Okay, just want to make sure. I didn't want anyone to get in trouble showing up at pickleball, setting up their
Yeah.
food truck. So
Right, right.
that's, I know that's a lot, but that's all I have. sir.
Good, good. Unless someone else wants to jump in front of me, I'll throw out two that I have.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Wait a second.
okay.
Want to get Scott back here?
No, but I don't think that if the construction crew at Pickleball said to a vendor, will you pull up on our job site off of 10th Street every Tuesday and Thursday at noon so our employees can go get lunch, I don't know if that's a violation.
Right, it's not commercially zoned property.
It's a construction site.
Yeah, but then you're talking about the old, cuisine machines, I call them,
Right.
not the Rose Coast. Are they gonna set up for 4 hours?
Well, I'm just bringing it up because it was mentioned. Would that be?
I don't know.
I mean, we could add, unless approved by the city, to operate in a city park.
I mean, that's no different than saying,
I don't want to do that, because I want them to get the city's permission if they want to set up in Sunrise Park, for example. But I'm talking about a construction site. While contractors are on the job site,
I can add something that says that under an active construction site, that public parks or construction.
I'm not suggesting one way or the other.
I think if you
raising the
remain
issue.
silent on it and then you bring it back to this commission or we take it on now, if we want to allow that to happen, because that's our park, we could just say, yeah, happen now, only during construction. But when pickleball opens, no.
It would serve a purpose while it was a construction site, at any construction site we had. I'm sure it would have been helpful at SunTrust when it was being changed over to Florida Health.
Oh, they got pizza.
That's too close to the pizza place.
it wasn't, I tried that, it didn't work.
It's further down the street.
Hey, if you're sitting up there for 4 hours, it wasn't worth it for 4 minutes, so don't waste your time. We were moving and it still didn't work.
But I just would think it would be helpful to the workers that are there, and
It's not a problem right now, so
No
I
problem.
don't want to
We
address
got a
it
lot
right
of
now.
tweaking to do.
Yeah. All right, so going to 4F, Mr. Walker, can you explain to me why we only allow on paved surfaces and not grassy areas?
If you have mobile food vehicles that are setting up on just sand and grass, it begins to really wear away at the land. You have cars that are parking there, foot traffic. If it's rainy, you have a food truck that's constantly, it can rut the property. So it's
Again, this
through
isn't the
experience.
occasional, this is the 4 days a week, you got this heavy food truck pulling onto this property in the same spot, and now all of a sudden, that area of the ground is all worn out.
Well, that pretty much eliminates the construction sites, because none of them are paved until they pave them.
But that's an occasional thing, we're talking about the everyday thing, the 4 days a week.
Okay.
Construction site is a construction site,
So-
they're coming and going, like you say, 4 minutes is probably too long.
So in your professional opinion, Mr. Walker, it's well needed to force them to have to stay on that, on the pavement.
In my experience, I've never seen otherwise. In 18 years of doing this, I've never seen otherwise.
Okay.
So that's what I'm basing that on. And what also, again, I do look at what other jurisdictions do and what's done in even other states.
That's pretty universal?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then, never mind, no change. Going to anyone else? Does anyone else have any changes while we talk about this for it to come back to us? No? All right. What we'll do is, we'll go ahead and I'd ask you to withdraw your second, withdraw your motion.
Let me just amend my motion?
Were you done?
I was done.
Oh,
Too many changes.
I think what we'll do is we'll bring it back for first reading after they have it written.
Yeah.
I think that's what we were discussing.
Okay, all right, because I have
mean, if
all
you
this,
wanna
I
make
have
a
all the
motion-
strikeouts, but
I have them. We've got 1,
we were going
2,
to
3,
strike
4, 5,
paragraph
6,
D
7.
of 2.
I have 7
Yeah.
changes.
4D,
One.
4I,
I only have
3K.
3, 4,
I have 6 changes.
I have
5,
6.
6.
Yeah.
Somebody missed something.
He said 3M, but then he said he was
10.
okay with it.
Yeah, he did.
Would you like me to highlight the ones that I have?
We have the one-time annual fee under 5D,
We haven't discussed what that was either.
changing the annual, putting in the annual fee or the daily fee.
That's the one we missed.
That's 2D.
That's 2D.
Amend the
What?
amend.
That's the one that we
Yeah.
missed.
I'm sorry?
No, you've got that.
No, I have that on
I
here.
have that.
Number 1, 2D,
I know,
amend
I know.
annual
Right.
permit.
Getting late.
Yeah. John, would you just like to go through your
Yes,
list?
we had 2D. Then we had
3I.
striking 3I, I'm sorry,
No,
For
amending
private
3I to only for private
catering.
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 private catering.
Then we were going to strike the sentence, meaning Sunday through Saturday for a maximum of 16 days with any calendar month.
Correct.
3K.
I know,
3K.
we're
Then,
going to keep Sunday through Saturday. We're only going to strike for a maximum of 16 days within a calendar month.
okay.
Correct.
Then operating requirements,
Add the exception.
4A, we had to add the exception for I above. Then,
4D.
4D strike, and 4I strike.
Yep. Is there anything else, Jeff?
That was it.
That's 6.
That's accurate. 7.
6.
6.
It's past his bedtime.
Yeah, I guess so.
1, 2, 3,
Want to bet lunch on it?
5.
He's got
Oh,
me before.
I went on
that's
2
why.
pages. My highlight went to 2 pages. 6.
Man.
I was going to call up our mathematician, Stella, to count it for us.
You could have won a lot.
Can we have a recount?
So what's your pleasure, Mr. Mayor? Would you like me to amend my motion
Yeah,
to include those?
You
or
know,
bring it
being that
back?
this is a time-sensitive matter, this will come back second reading anyway, so if any of us have the problem with that, then we could talk about that at the second reading. Is that correct? This is coming back second reading?
You have 2 readings, yeah.
Okay.
February 11th.
So I would be open to you amending your original motion.
So I'd like to amend my motion to include the 6 changes I just referenced.
And I will second that amended motion with the 6 changes.
Great. And now procedurally, do I have to open that new motion up? Okay. And with that, we'll open up public comment on the new amended motion. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any discussion needed on we vote on the first
The amendment and the
motion.
motion.
The amendment first. So is there any discussion on the amendment?
I would just like to go on record that I will be voting only because there's a second reading, but I still have a little heartburn until.
About what? Well, just tell us what you're heartburn about.
My concern is that we've worked so hard to fill up places, and I'm not saying that this gentleman is gonna park across the street from this Andy, the new guy, but let's just say that the landlord of the next place has, I mean, you know some of the I've had a rivalry for 30 years. I'm still at it, okay? So what happens if the neighbor of some new place wants to get a food truck in spite? We're not protecting the brick and mortar buildings. It's not to say it's gonna happen, but I think if we're gonna make it so convenient for the food trucks, we need to protect our brick and mortar buildings a little bit more. So that's my only concern. You know, right now, it's, maybe it's just for the brewery. But what happens if
Right.
somebody comes in, they open up a little seafood place down the street, and the neighbor has a problem because he's allergic or doesn't like the smell? He wants to put this guy out of business. 4 days a week could do it. Then we end up with more empty buildings. That's not our intent. So I really have a hard time until I kind of process this. And I'm not saying anything to you, sir, because I'm in 32 years, I have no problem with competition. To me, competition, it's healthy, but we have struggled to fill up places with businesses, and now that we're kind of moving in a direction, I don't want to hinder or kind of obstruct any of this forward momentum with
Right.
places that have been here or places that are looking to come in, that's all. So,
Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner Danner just made me think, which is dangerous sometimes.
yeah,
Mr. Walker, we will not allow a food truck on a vacant property, but should we think about adding that we will not allow a food truck on a property that does not have it says if they have code violations, but should it say does not have an active business tax receipt? My fear is that if we have a vacant property, Hills Plumbing, and food trucks come in there, that would currently be allowed if that landlord wanted them in there, correct? As long as there's no code violations. Should we, does it say that in our ordinance, that it must have a current business tax receipt? I don't recall.
Let me just check the,
I think it said if they have any violations, we won't do it.
how do I make you think of that?
Because you said a lot of empty properties around here. Okay,
It still doesn't protect anything, any existing. I mean, we're working in,
it's paragraph G on page 6. It says, "A mobile food vehicle may not be located on private property which uncorrected code violations exist, or where there exist unpaid fines, fees, or citations, or which is under citation or code violations."
That's under the prohibited. I think we should move it under section 2, which is licensing permitting requirements, and it should state there that a business tax receipt is required.
I just don't know if that's prudent to do, or just,
I think it'd be pretty, I think it'd be pretty good.
Now you're gonna make me amend my amendment.
I know.
Then to make it 7.
Oh, you
That
just want
makes it
7. Oh, goodness.
Listen, I'm not amending anymore. You keep going and forget it.
You're not along for the ride.
Yeah, we could add that a BTR is required in the requirement section of section 2.
Okay.
Do you want to make that amendment to the amendment?
Yeah, then we'll have to vote 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
I will amend it to add that to section 2.
And I will second that amendment.
All right. Anyone in the public like to speak to that amendment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we will continue discussion on the amendment of the amendment. I think you got it. Any other discussion on the amendment of the amendment? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on the amendment of the amendment. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That amendment passes unanimously. Now we go to the First Amendment, which is the 6 items. Discussion. It was over here. Are you done with your discussion?
I thought we were voting on the whole, at the end of it.
We have to
We gotta
vote
vote
on
3
each.
times.
Each.
It's just crazy, but we have to.
So your discussion good?
Yeah, as long as we have,
You'll look
Yeah,
at
yeah.
what it comes back to us and then vote yes or no.
okay,
All
that's
right.
fine.
Any other discussion needed? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now to the original motion of approval for this ordinance. Any discussion needed? I will just say that, just to respond to a couple of things, the reason, and I see exactly what you're saying, and there's a lot of validity to what you're saying, and we all know that up here. And you know, the food trucks are an accessory to our existing businesses, and that was his argument, that he's paying taxes which are well and above $125 a year for a business like yours to come in. And so we are up here to protect our business owners and our citizens first and foremost. With that being said, I do think that it's an added bonus for our citizens, for the workers that work in our community to have access to these things. As he talked about, they may only have a 30-minute break, and to be able to have access to that. And so for that reason, I think that the benefits outweigh the negative, because we haven't had the negative come yet. Now, if we have 1 business, 2 business, 5 businesses come and tell us, wow, you have now taken away my lunch crowd because across the street from me they have this set up, then I think that this whole body would have to perk up and listen to that and respond to that. So I think in this case, we allow it to be more open, and if there's a problem, then we come back and fix this, because I'm right on board with you. I want to protect our businesses that are paying those yearly taxes. It's important for us to support them. But also, then as an accessory, we're helping the businesses that aren't in the restaurant business. For instance, the brewery. We know that they would lose a ton of clientele if they weren't allowed to have a food truck out there. So I think that that's...
Can I just say something?
You can say something, yeah.
No, I was just saying, we've kind of tailored it around, but we never put any kind of a distance on the brick and mortars. How come we never did that?
What do you mean?
Like, they can't be within a couple hundred feet. It can't be within a couple hundred feet of each other, but what's to say they can't be a couple hundred feet from another restaurant?
Could you have her? Oh,
Ryan
well,
said
it's
they've
because
lost
of
lawsuits
it lost
over
a
it.
lawsuit.
They lost
So you would
lawsuits
be regulating competition. So we can't say just because you're a restaurant now we can't allow them to be
So
this.
we've kind of tailored it to, we have it 1 day a week now. Why can't we have it that they only can have it 4 days a week if they stay outside or something? We're changing it to kind of
Because
accommodate,
you would still be regulating between competition.
well, haven't
So-
we regulated that by having 1 day a week?
No, that's not competition. That would be what we're allowing them to do. As opposed to, we're not saying, I think what you're getting at is you don't want someone right next door to you. Right?
I don't
Well,
care.
not you,
I'm
but
just-
let's just say a business that doesn't want it.
Yeah.
Then that's the conflict, is we can't say, you can't set up next to a restaurant because
But we
they're
already
all
told
in
them
the-
we can't, they can only do it 1 day a week. Haven't we already kind of taken away their,
for.
no, I'm saying in the beginning, we only gave them 1 day a week. So we've pretty much, as a whole body, told them they can only have 1 day a week, so we've already hamstringed them 4 days a week. Now we're gonna give them 3 more days, but we're not gonna have any,
We permitted the use 1 day a week. Now we're gonna permit the use 4 days a week.
but before, it wasn't a lawsuit, but now it is?
We didn't
No.
restrict the location.
Right. The locations are the
Not
lawsuit.
the days of the week. It's, you can't say you can't be this far from that business.
Right. And maybe what we can do,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Mr. Danio, is get with Joe, and, you know, you can talk to the attorney about that as well to get those solid answers. And I think they'll be able to,
Talk to my fellow restaurateurs, just to see.
yeah,
I mean, they may not have a problem with it, you know?
That may be the case. You're
Yeah.
gonna get 30 restaurant owners in the next meeting.
yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And all that's
I just
good
want to, I
information.
don't want to be devil's advocate, I just want to be on the fair side, that's how I'm wired, you know?
Vice Mayor?
Just think of it as a Snap-on tool truck guy coming by and competing with Ace Hardware. He goes by every shop in town, he's hawking his tools, he doesn't pay taxes in our city, he's in,
I
he's
know,
out,
he
you
doesn't
know.
sit there in the parking lot either.
I know, but he could. You know, so I mean, it's just to say, just to show,
If he did, would it be fair?
I don't know, no different than the ice cream guy coming by and competing with people selling ice cream at Publix.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's
And I think what we should do is, and you know, use this time this is good information
Yeah.
for us. It's, you know, so use this time to get with Joe and to hash out your disagreements, and you don't have to vote yes on
No,
this.
I know, no, I
So,
know. That's why I said it.
right. You may vote yes tonight,
Yeah.
but maybe not.
and keep in mind that at second reading, we can tweak this more. You know,
Right.
it's not an up or down. It's not
Yeah.
everything here. We can.
I don't want
we
to
can-
marry this thing, you know?
No, we can massage it more.
Right. So if you don't agree with one of these things, you can bring it back up at the next reading. We can strike it or whatever have you. So
Right.
with that, is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. I'm sorry, but we had public comment already. Thank you. No, thank you, sir. Now we're going to move to communications. City manager? All right. We will go, I'll start off this week. As many of you know, my wife gave birth to a beautiful 7-pound, 7-ounce baby boy. And so I'm a proud father. Harrison Robert Villa is his name, and very, very blessed to have that. But I apologize to staff for including you, Brian, for throwing questions out without talking to you before. I usually get my questions answered before the meeting, but I haven't had much time with the birth of my son. So I appreciate you answering all those. Also, I just wanted to address something that happened tonight during public comment. We usually don't, and I wish they were still here to hear this. And in fact, one gentleman just walked out. We're running a business meeting here, and we have to keep things in time. We have a lot of staff that has to be here, and so that's why we limit things. And, you know, we did allow an extra minute of response time to let the gentleman finish up. He wasn't familiar with the way things work, and so I just wanted to address that. I wanted to thank my commission for being fair to that gentleman who, you know, thought that this was the process, but I think we educated him on the way it goes and what he was asking us to do. But as I told him, and I'll tell anybody else, we are all available pretty much any time. Our cell phone numbers are always on and available, so we are available to talk about any issues at length, and we can explain things better than we can up here. So I just wanted to address that. I wanted to thank my commission for allowing us to be as fair as possible within the limits of Robert's rules. So I appreciate that. That's all I have tonight, and we will go to Commissioner Curry.
I really don't have anything either. I'm just looking forward to the upcoming trip to Tallahassee.
Oh, did you get to go?
Yeah, I'm going.
There's only 4 going so far.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Separate.
Holly Hill will be
separate
well
rooms.
represented.
Yeah.
Separate rooms. Just want to clarify that. But that I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Looking forward to hopefully bringing back good news. So
Yeah.
who knows?
All right, Commissioner Danio.
I noticed that the Teacher of the Year was the Teacher of the Year.
I forgot to mention that. Yes,
That's
yes.
great. was Holly Hill, but.
Good memory.
No, I know, I saw that. I just want to apologize for, lingering on about, just, I don't typically say much, so.
No apology
No,
needed.
don't
I
apologize.
usually do, but congratulations.
I loved the pep in your step today. I loved it. That's what makes, look, if we were all in agreement all the time, then,
You boring?
right. My dad used to say, the beauty of the rainbow is the difference in colors.
That's good.
Yeah, but it took him a half hour to say that.
Yeah, it would.
I know he's listening.
Probably. Commissioner Johnson.
I don't have a lot, but I know I push the issue sometimes about things like 4-lane in the road and making it better and all, but I just try to look more into the future, and I know it's hard to get funding for anything, and I've been in business here in this area for 50 years, and it's hard to do it, but you always have to look for a way to do it. And it just brings to mind my brother ran the airport in Melbourne for 20 years. He was a chief in charge down there, and he came over from Saudi Arabia, and he decided he was come in and make it an international airport. He did. He improved it a lot, and he used probably 90% of the funding he got. He conned it out of the federal government. Now I know the federal government's running low on funds too because they're spending a lot of money lately, but after April the 15th they'll have more because we're all paying our taxes in. But the only other thing I know is, that I could think of is, when your son gets a little bit older, consider the Ormond Beach Spikes. They're a super good baseball team.
He will be. He's going to be a baseball
Ormond Beach
star.
Spikes. Don't go to Daytona. Port Arthur.
Amen. Vice Mayor Penny.
Just want to say congratulations, and that
Thank you.
HRV is a submodel of a Honda, just so you know.
Well, so is CRV.
That's true.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. I, too, just really quickly want to say, man, we have the Volusia County Teacher of the Year. I asked if that has ever happened. To their recollection, that has not happened out of
Bring her
Holly Hill.
back again.
We do. And actually,
That was
Penny
exciting.
Curry was there. They did a presentation of giving the car, and Commissioner Curry was there, and our police officers and Joe. What's that?
Give her the car they can take it for a year.
Yeah, they take it for a year.
back.
They get it for a year. They get it for a year. But that's a great blessing to them because they have a lot of driving to do around the county to speak. I mentioned something there that we're going to name a day after Josie Stump because this is such a major accomplishment for a teacher. Over 72 teachers nominated. It's an honor just to be of your own school with the ton of teachers there. So without objection, I would like to give a proclamation to her that whatever day that she got that award is now Josie Stump Day. So I'm glad you brought that up. All right, and with that, is there any further business? Seeing none, we will adjourn.